Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Lyda? Dr. Middlebrooks?
Here.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Posey?
Here.
Mr. Shaw?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here. If the clerk will please provide the invocation of Mr. Posey's pledge.
Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for your love and mercy. Teach us to be loving and merciful to others. We pray for Linda Crump, our former city clerk, and her family on the death of her grandson, TJ. May your peace sustain them in their time of grief. We pray for your wisdom and guidance upon this mayor and council in their service to the citizens of this city. In your name we pray. Amen. Salute and pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm open to a recommendation.
Mr. President, I move for the approval of minutes without reading.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. The ayes have it. Next we have in the report section, Mayor, before we get to you, Judge Lawley wanted to take about 45 minutes. Say hello.
Thank you, Council Mayor. I'm Davis Lawley. I used to be your drug court judge here in Jefferson County. Just briefly to tell you, Judge Cornelia Green Norman was sick and she had to retire, and so that opened up a seat for juvenile court. Very important court. We neglect it a lot of times. I see a lot of law enforcement here. We know it's very important. You need to get qualified people in. Just to tell you briefly, I've been practicing 30 years in Washington, D.C. and here. Graduated from Washington University. Was on the honor court there. I was listed in the bar polls. Wherever I run is most qualified in all my categories. Something you ought to know about me personally is I have sat down there as a judge, and that's why a lot of people down in that court wanted me back in this. And so I'm trying to get back to you the quality that I think I can bring to that court. I will let you know this, when we went to the National Judicial College, the other lawyers and judges of the state elected me to represent them in the competition, and we won in 2007 nationwide, so that was a really big thing for us. First time Alabama had won that. But I just want you to get engaged in the courts. When we get neglected, you don't hear about us, we're in for 6 years, and it's very important to actually dig down and find out who's running for judge. So with that, I appreciate it, and hope you get out there in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Mayor, employee recognition.
Good evening. We don't specifically have someone making a milestone in terms of the years of service here, but we do started bringing our our new police officers up to be sworn in by the chief of police. So, Chief Durgis, if you would come up, and Officer Corey Smith.
Mayor, council, distinguished guests, always an exciting time to introduce you to a new officer. Corey Smith, come on down, please. After we swear Corey in, I'm going to have two special guests, or two new employees with the police department that we want to introduce. So get to, right now, the oath of office with Corey and move on. Corey comes to us, he's a former Montgomery police officer and Altaga County Sheriff's Office. 4 years of law enforcement experience, and married to Amber. Just moved to Hoover, so we have a new resident, and an exciting time for he and his family, and for the Hoover Police Department too, because we're happy and very proud to have him.
these other officers gonna be sworn in?
They're not gonna really be sworn in, but, had a little, should be fun. I would like, Officer Kevin Hollis and Matthew Bond to come on in. Kevin Hollis, 7 years with our department. He's been the SRO at Spain Park for the past 2 years, and he had his dog, Ava. Well, Ava retired this past summer, and we have replaced Ava with Ace, who's a 1-year-old black lab. And what's amazing is that Ava and Ace have the same dad. Pretty incredible. We won't talk about it. And this is a drug dog, so anybody that has anything, you might want to get the hell out of here. And as I mentioned to the council several months ago, we were chosen to receive ATF Bomb Dog, one of 8 agencies in the United States. This is the first class that ATF has had for state and local. They've been doing them every year just for the ATF dogs. This is the first time in 10 years. We used to have Hans. If everybody remembers Hans, Hans retired last year. Hans worked with us for 10 years. And it is pretty impressive to know that when ATF had the school this year, they only chose 8 police departments in the United States, and we were one of the 8. So Matt Bond here was chosen to attend the academy in Front Royal, Virginia. This dog is really incredible. 2-year-old lab. They graduated August 10th, 2018. Her name is Fancy. And what's pretty cool is the preliminary training. Auburn University now has a canine bond deal that they've got going at the university. And Fancy actually started at Auburn, and the canine facility in Front Royal, Virginia for ATF saw her, tested her, was very impressed, and she, again, was one of the 8 that they chose to use. So, again, we're very, very excited. What's amazing on the ATF bomb dogs, it's a food reward. So, Officer Bond has to train this dog every day, and the only way the dog gets fed out of the hand is when they find what they're looking for. So, again, very impressive. He was gone from the beginning of June till August in Front Royal, Virginia. They bring 8 dogs, 8 police officers in. After a couple of days, they all bond together. Matt bonded with Fancy, or Fancy bonded with him. And they give you a crate, they give you a dog, and you go back to the Holiday Inn for a couple months. So again, real pleased that both these dogs have joined the force. I've got their badges with their names inscribed on them, and we will put them on and get some pictures.
Chief, my wife has me on the same Hoover award program.
And well trained, as you can see. I'm sorry. Okay, I changed it back to here. I'm sorry. Lord have mercy, this is that. Ace, I hope you don't do this at you. Ace will come on the back side. Ace already has a Spain Park. Wow, that's pretty impressive here. Got his name on it and everything. Okay, so we want to introduce you to, we've got a new police officer, 2 new canines, and we're very excited. Mayor, certainly appreciate the council's support to our canines. We have 10 right now, and they can do phenomenal work, and very pleased, and appreciate these officers, because it is, if you've got a dog at home, imagine bringing the dog to work every day with you for 8 hours. It's a lot of pushing work. We appreciate you guys. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Mayor brought up that this Auburn dog is going to be working probably some of the Alabama home games. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out. Great. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks. Thank you.
Mayor, would you like to introduce Mary?
Yes, I've asked Mike Lewis to come up. You know, we've been working for many, many months on a salary survey going throughout the entire city, talking with department heads, employees about how we compensate. So we want to make sure we continue to attract the very best of the best out there. And so this study, we believe, is moving us in that direction where we can continue to be the employee of choice. We're excited about this. We think it looks like a really good study has been done, a good plan, and so I've asked Mike to come up and he will introduce his guest and talk further about this compensation study. So Mike, you will come up.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a process that really began almost a year ago. I believe we had initial meetings back in September, and it's taken a little while to get where we are today, but I think we're going to have a plan presented that's going to be good for this city and good for its employees. Real quick, a little history. It has been approximately, well, it's now a little more than 10 years since the last study of this kind was done. And I don't need to rehash a lot of the shortcomings of that study. I'm sure we got some folks here tonight who could probably comment in on that. In 2015, we internally took measures to, with council's approval, to reduce our step plan from the previous 25-step plan down to a 15-step plan. But that was done internally, did not come with a market analysis. So this study, Ms. Merriweather should talk about here in a minute, is the first one in that decade that includes a full wholesale market analysis. She'll say more about that. Real quick, Gail joins us from Arthur J. Gallagher's office in Kansas City, Missouri. She's now visited us on site for various meetings numerous times, and has been really a joy to work with. And I won't say too much more. Turn it over to Ms. Merriweather. Thank you.
Good evening. Again, my name is Gail Merriweather. I'm Area Vice President of Human Resources Consulting Services with Gallagher Benefit Services, and I've been doing this for about 25 years. First and foremost, I absolutely have to thank the City of Hoover. It's been a joy to work with the leadership. They've been available, met with me, accepted phone calls. The employees have participated. For the employees that are here, thank you so very much for completing the PDQs. You did an excellent job of telling us all about your jobs. So with that, I'm going to try to work my way through the presentation in less than, I was challenged today by a few of the directors to see if I could get through it in less than 2 minutes. I'm going to try to do it in about 5. So, half hour. All right. Thank you, Councilman Smith. So then I'll start just a little bit by talking about the process. Before we do any work for a client, we want to spend some time with the leadership to understand their concerns about the project. What kind of issues are they facing as it relates to compensation? Are they facing any issues with recruiting, retention? And we spent about an hour and a half initially with each of the directors to understand exactly what was going on in their departments. After that, we did informational sessions wherein all the employees had the opportunity to understand the information that we needed in order to evaluate their jobs. Because the system that we developed is a market analysis, so we thoroughly needed to understand, just in case someone is gone and someone is taking up the work of another employee, exactly what was entailed within their job, so they completed PDQs for us. And we also went through the process of developing job descriptions. Another part with those meetings is we wanted to understand who's the competition. Where are you recruiting employees from? Who are you losing them to? So that we'd make sure that we understood the relevant labor market. The other components of the work was to also understand concerns around variable pay, how the organizations were structured, because staffing analysis was also a part of the work. So again, I cannot be thankful enough for the participation of the of the staff here at Hoover. They made my job a whole lot easier. Our goal was to make sure that we thoroughly understood the external labor market. What are other similarly situated municipalities paying within the Birmingham area? But we looked outside of the Birmingham area as well, and we'll kind of go through what those municipalities or who those municipalities are. But in addition to external competitiveness, we also wanted to make sure that we had a thorough understanding of internal equity. But keep in mind, it's the external market that was the real bearing or the real holding point for developing the structure that we've developed. We also wanted to make sure that when I hit the lottery and retire, that the system would be one that you guys could also administer on your own without a lot of guidance from Gallagher. So then with that, it's important to know, where did we look? In order to understand the private sector, because it's crucial, there are jobs within the city of Hoover that you'll compete within the private market: accounting functions, engineering functions, construction functions. We looked at the Alabama Department of Labor at the municipality areas that you see behind me, from Anniston, Alabama, all the way down to Tuscaloosa. We also take a look at the Towers-Watson series. I wanted to make sure that we thoroughly understood levels of complexity. As an example, with the accounting position, I think you guys acknowledge, or you have one classification as an accountant. But what we know in the marketplace is there's about 4 different levels, and it's come in handy when we come back to say, this is where we believe your job is, according to the data that we've received. We developed a custom survey, and that custom survey was sent out to the municipalities, again, that you see behind you. I want to make mention that it was sent out and we received responses from Alpharetta, Georgia, Brentwood, Tennessee, and Franklin, Tennessee. They are on our list because they are municipalities that are similarly situated to Hoover, and that they sit outside of a large metropolitan area, and the demographics are fairly consistent. So then, going through that process, one of the other things that we wanted to make sure that we understood is, how has everybody else structured their compensation systems? Are there open ranges? Are there step systems? How many step systems might there be? And what we learned is that, for the most part, everybody still has about a step system. I think there were 3 municipalities that participated who actually had an open range system. So those with the step system, first we did some averaging. So if we look at just the step systems, how many steps then on average, and then how far apart on average? So on average, it was about 14.5 steps, and the increments were about 4%. I think that's fairly consistent with what you all have now. But when we look a little bit closer to the relevant labor market in this area, what we find is that a majority of the folks that were involved in the survey actually have 10 plus 3. And I kept getting questions as to what's a 10 plus 3. It's basically 13 steps that are about 5% increments. We ran a number of iterations for the city of Hoover to make sure that we could thoroughly understand where that competitive position would be. What I think is the most important piece is to understand that typically we look at one data point and what is the average. For the city of Hoover, because we had been, the direction had been given to us from higher up, that we wanted to make sure that we were an employer of choice, that our pay was competitive, if not leading the marketplace. So we looked at the midpoint of the salary ranges. We also looked at the maximum. Whose range had the maximum? What did that look like? We looked at the minimums. Who are they? Where are they? And then those metropolitan areas. So we used a lot of data points to determine what the structure should look like for the city of Hoover. And we did this for the approximate, about 135 job classifications. But once we were done with the levels of complexity, we probably have about 150. Some you won't use, but you will know where those promotional opportunities would be. So then in conclusion, after we had gone through, developed the structure, then I called back and asked Mr. Lewis if they could send over to me the names of all of the employees and their job titles for me to be able to put them back into the structure, compare their actual salary to the 50 percentile of the salary ranges so that we can make then a recommendation or at least comment about where you're currently paid. and the new structure. So then, the conclusion is, while the city of Hoover, your pay is highly competitive on average, you don't necessarily lead the market. And when we say on average, there are some jobs of which you're very competitive, and there were a number of jobs that you were not competitive. And when we say we're not competitive, there were some positions of which your pay was less than the minimum on the new salary range that we're recommending. So then, what we're recommending is a 13-step, 5% increment. And then once we've placed all of the employees back in to do an assessment as to what the cost would be, let me say, because it is a step system, what we did was to take each employee, place them back in the range. If their pay, their current pay, was equal to a step in the range that we're placing them in, there is no movement for that particular employee. If their pay fell between 2 steps, we recommend that you move them to the next highest step, not that you take money away from an employee, but that you move them up. And once you go through that process, and this is an approximate because I think that we gathered the data from the city of Hoover probably about 3 or 4 months ago. So there's a strong possibility there's been increases since then. The cost to implement would be about $1.1 million. So then, what we've done so far is to also complete a staffing analysis. Your staffing analysis basically is a wash. There were some jobs of which, some departments that it appeared that you may have been understaffed, some that you may have been overstaffed. It was public works and parks, and once we understood that we just simply moved maintenance from one to the other, it's a wash. And then even when we take a look at some of the areas that you may have been understaffed by 2 or 3, overstaffed by 2 or 3, once you do the averaging, it's a wash. And so what I've shared with Mr. Lewis is that you're not either understaffed or overstaffed, it's just staffed differently. So there are some pieces that you'll have to work on. We're in the process of updating all of the job descriptions, and when I say updating and in the process, now my eyes just need to go back over them, and then they're basically finalized. And we're in the process of developing an effective performance management system. It is absolutely complete. Now we just simply need to do training with the employees and staff. Questions?
Anybody care to start before I do?
Mr. President, can you go back to the graph for a second? The numbers in red, are those those are the current ranges, and the number right above it is what it would increase to? Is that correct? So those numbers in red below there, is that where we are now?
The numbers in red basically represent the fire department because their hourly rates are slightly different.
Okay, so that has nothing to do with the ranges within which it would
Right.
increase or decrease?
Right.
Well, not decrease, but increase.
Right.
Okay, I was curious because I saw that and the red kind of stands out.
Yeah, only because of the hours. Their hours oftentimes are not 2080, they may be 2701. It kind of goes across the board, and I think if the fire chief is here, I don't see. Oh, 20, is it 2701? Okay.
Okay, that answers that question. I think for me, I'm more interested in hearing from all of you and how you feel about it rather than us talking in general.
Meriwether, what steps are yet to be completed? I thought we were getting towards the end of this.
We are. The next step really is for the council to approve the structure.
Okay, when can we get copies that we can really read? You know, 2 of us are pretty elderly up here. Our eyes aren't as good as maybe Mr. Hoover or Dr. Moody.
There are just a handful of recommendations around policies and implementation that I just need Mr. Lewis to reread, and then after that, it's yours. My hands are totally off. So I will end up turning it over to him.
Ms. Mayweather, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You say that in some markets we were competitive and some we weren't, less
some jobs,
Speaking specifically about public safety sector, how are we on the job market compared to the area municipalities?
You are not as competitive. Public safety, both fire and police, semi-skilled, unskilled workers, public works maintenance, park maintenance, those are jobs that stick with me because this is what I do. And not that I come in thinking that you're going to be low, but I've been watching the market finally start to move up a bit for those positions. So in my head, I actually know what your old number was, so the minimum for each of those classifications will go up, and so too will the maximum. However, if I might, for police, the minimum isn't the place that you have to worry about whether or not you're competing. Those entities now are recruiting police officers from other municipalities, not necessarily bringing them out of an academy, and so then it's not your starting wage. It's going to be your wage that's closer up to that 5th, 6th, 7th step. So now we've developed a structure that I think it's probably significantly higher than the maximum that you currently have.
So in your professional opinion, if we were to approve this, then we will become much more competitive in those job markets?
Absolutely, but I want you to also keep in mind that you can't necessarily focus on the starting rate for a number of the jobs. Part of my conversation with Mr. Lewis is that you need to be prepared to at the very least consider a starting rate might very well be from step 1 through 4. And if you get to the point that you need to compete towards the midpoint, which would have been step 7, then get prior approval.
And this will make us competitive not only in recruitment, but also retention?
Absolutely. I've been challenged with those different components from training opportunities, paramedics versus EMTs, FAOs, etc. So when I looked at the marketplace, one of the things that you all do is have a police officer 1, and that's it. In some of my municipalities, I'm accustomed to seeing a master police officers 1s and 2s, master firefighter 1s and 2s. So what I did was to accommodate for what those higher levels would have been. So the range that I developed is more reflective of what that maximum would have been had you had a police officer 2. Because if I would have left it at just a police officer 1, you would still not be able to compete really in the marketplace.
One other question, I guess. Speaking on the variable pay positions, I understand that you're recommending 2 positions for variable pay. That would be our police officers who are field training officers, and the firefighters who are apparatus operators, the drivers, correct?
Let me speak to that. For the police officer in the training role, there's probably a training role in other departments as well. So I am not sure that I would just say definitively that it's only for police officers. I think I understand that there's also a training role within the dispatchers. So what we've done is just simply write a statement that says special assignment, because it really would be a special assignment. That training role isn't one that's a continuum for the 12 months. It starts and then it stops, and it's going to depend on your recruiting and how often you're bringing employees in. So we didn't want to just say that it belonged in that one area, okay? So keep that in mind. So if there are other positions throughout the city of which another employee has to play a leadership role and has to do the training, I think we need to be able to make space for that as well. When it comes to the fire apparatus operator, what we see in the marketplace is that there's some consistency with the fire apparatus operator, which can also be called a fire engineer, and the firefighter paramedic. There isn't a huge differential in that market rate. The difference is if it's a firefighter EMT or firefighter AEMT and not a paramedic. So what we've done is have another category, another salary range for firefighter EMT. And have I see a question.
Go ahead, I'll let you finish.
No, because you moved, I go ahead and ask the question.
Well, what specifically is you call it variable pay, I'll say an incentive pay for the apparatus operator? What would these gentlemen out here who take on more duties and more responsibilities as the driver expect to see?
I am not sure, because I don't want to just tie it down. My role was to look at the market and say, this is what the market pay differential is for that job. What I can say definitively is that oftentimes there's consistency with a firefighter operator and a paramedic. That's about it. Now, if you push me against the wall and say, no, give me a number, I think the range that we have them in now is going to be able to accommodate for that movement. And it's just, I think we're just going to require some more discussion as to where you want to place them. My role was to make sure that the salary range that we brought back was not confining, and that you would have the opportunity to then differentiate within that salary range.
Thank you.
Mr. President, Mr. Fairweather, so this only includes salary, it did not look at other benefits such as insurance, vacation, education incentive, military leave, take-home vehicles, anything else, only salary, is that correct?
It's only base pay. That structure is only base pay. While we did ask questions around those pieces of variable pay, some of them did give us back the data, but not all of them. And I will say, the trend has been to fold in all of that variable pay into base salary so that finance isn't concerned with where does this dollar go and did this person, just that whole piece from longevity pay. I don't want to open up can of worms, but from longevity pay and every other piece of pay, we've been figuring out how do we roll it into base salary.
Thank you. Mayor Weather, how many cities responded to your request?
Probably, I think 6 actually completed the entire survey, because the survey was fairly long. We asked about pay, how many employees, exempt and non-exempt variable pay. Then I, through my own research, gathered data probably from another 7 or 8. And then there were about 5 or 6 who said, the survey is long, we're just sending you our data and you guys fill it out. What we'd like to have is at least 5 different responses going through the process. I think we probably had about 10 or 12. And then our private data to supplement that. So we're confident with the data points.
What about those that Hoover shares the employment pool, so to speak? The state of Mountain Brook, Coleman, Pelham, Alabaster, North Shelby Fire, Shelby County Sheriff, Jefferson County Sheriff. Did you get enough information from those agencies to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples?
Remember I said one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we understood from the directors is where should we look? So they gave us the list of municipalities to look at. Because I think I heard you just say a couple of counties or a fire department or a sheriff's department. If it was one that they gave us, it is one that we sought to gather data. Not everybody participates, so sometimes you have to go through the open records request. I'm not real good at IT, but oftentimes I can figure out how to find payroll.
Mr. President, firstly, thank you so much. I think we've been talking about budgetary discussion quite some time, and it's not very formative myself. I just speak for myself of the challenges and also how both chiefs have advocated for the needs of their employees. I'm strictly talking about public safety at this point because a large amount of budget comes from public safety. And it'll be ideal. I used to love watching Barney fight. The guy used to just, when he get drunk, he just open up the cell and just walk in. And then he'll let himself out in the morning. But I don't think we have that type of environment of the day where it's just that easy. Our police and fire and men and women do a multitude of things, day in and day out, not just for citizens here. Again, this is not going to be foreign to me. I've had an opportunity to research this. I'm a pro-public safety person. Unless the chief of police, they have any commentary to yield to me that will make me think differently on this particular study, and I fully support it. But I know we're going to budget hearing times, and maybe that's maybe the appropriate question to ask tomorrow on that. But Mr. President, if when this wrap up, if they can just yield a little bit of information, I'll be happy on that notion.
My understanding that Mr. Merriweather's going to be here for a little while tomorrow. Probably going to have some run over time with the budget meetings. Are you going to be at City Hall before 10 o'clock?
I will be if you want me to be.
Oh, how about before 9 o'clock?
I'll be here 2 minutes till 9.
So we'll have 2 minutes. Very good.
Now, Councilman Smith, you guys are all I have in the city of Hoover. I absolutely, I have nothing scheduled for tomorrow except a flight that leaves out at about 4. And I can always come back because I'm from Georgia, so I love coming to Alabama.
You're living in Kansas.
I know, my kids are grown, they can take care of themselves, I don't have any animals.
All right.
But I will be here in the morning now.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Merriweather?
President, I have a couple real quick.
Yes, sir.
Again, thank you for being here and for all the thorough work on this. On one of the pages, you talked about highly competitive and then also lead the market. The matrix we're looking at here, what is the definite, where does this get us? Does it get us into the highly competitive range, and if so, how do we define that? And then, or does it get us into the lead the market range? Where does it play in that range?
Once I developed my structure and said, this looks good for the city of Hoover, then we placed all of the employees back in. And those percentages that you see, you'll see minus 3 point,
I saw that.
yes, minus 3.7 on average for all staff. That basically meant that when I placed you guys back into the structure, you are not on average meeting the market, you're slightly below. But we consider anything 5% on either side of the 100% to be highly competitive. So if you implement what we're recommending, I think then, because I didn't do the percentages, it should get you past that 3.1 so that you will then start to lead the market. But I want you to keep in mind, not every position are you at that space. This is an average. So there are some positions for which you lead the market.
And we did talk a lot about public safety, and obviously that's pretty important to us. So where does this matrix bring us in line when it comes to public safety? Because you indicated that it was kind of behind before.
Yeah, we will be increasing the minimum and increasing the maximum. If you don't get anything else, this is the most important piece when it comes to public safety. You cannot concentrate on recruiting at step 1. You've got to compete a little bit higher now because we're looking to recruit seasoned officers and not necessarily officers from the academy. So with that step system, you might very well have to start bringing officers in at step 3 or 4. It just depends on what we're looking at. And when we did the staffing analysis, I think we identified that you were probably 4 short, both in police and then 4 short in fire as well.
4 short meaning?
Staffing,
Okay.
uniformed officers.
Yeah, and I guess that's the source of my question, because you did, again, we're looking at how public safety is a little different, and if we're looking at these highly competitive terms, I just want to make sure we understand what that means for those special classes, the folks that are.
Yes, it simply means that you're paying within 5% of 100%.
I guess that's one thing I want to understand a little bit more of, is talk about public safety and how it's different. The employees are different. It's one of our superpowers here in Hoover. We want to make sure that we have that covered. That competitiveness is very important. We've had many discussions about the employer choice. We want to make sure that that number is broken out. I want to understand how that highly competitive term works and how the leading the market works.
Okay.
Okay, good. That's all.
That being said, we also need to realize that all the other city employees are no less important. So we've got to look out for everyone. Instead of having 3 people apply for one job, I prefer to have 6, 7, 300.
And then lastly, keep in mind, there are a number of employees that you have that are being paid below the minimum that we're recommending.
How long before you anticipate that the council will have a complete list of all job titles with their grade, with the grades that they apply to? I know that you got to go person to person to determine steps, but at this point, I'm wanting to see positions and grade levels.
Yes.
Today, we spent literally all day with department heads. This is the first time we were able to present that information, that very same information requested to them. That information strictly based on market data. There are going to be, this is their first time getting it, digesting it. There may be adjustments made based on feedback from the department. With that being said, we can get that list to the council members this week, probably as soon as we want. Just with the caveat that there may be fluctuations based on feedback from the department.
Any other questions from the council?
I would, if I can,
Yes,
just to follow up to Dr. Middlebrook's question on the apparatus operators and field training officers in the police department. Although the market analysis we tasked Gallagher to complete did not come back with recommendations for separate classes on those, internally we are committed to finding an answer to those questions, and it will be a local decision, not one necessarily born out of this study, as far as what that incentive looks like and how that would take place within our structure. Again, I kind of go back to the fact that today was the first day that both Chief Durzis and Bentley received this information that did not contain distinct job classes for those 2 functions. So we certainly wanted to be able to get some feedback from them on it as well.
Any other questions?
Mr. President, will they have the feedback in time for a budget hearing on tomorrow? I know police and fire are maybe midday when they come up. Will they have the information prior?
I don't want to speak for either one of them, but they were both presented with the analysis and the list of job classifications today. So I'm receptive to their comments whenever they want to send them to me.
Thank you, sir.
They know how to find them.
Anything else?
Mr. Lewis, there's so many public safety people here, and I realize there are other employees here, but on the public safety side, I wish that this crowd here, because I was very pleased today to hear the salary structure, from the beginning salary for police and fire to the top down salary, because we see those increases. And I wish we could spend this, I realize this, we don't want this week to last all night, but I wish like on the police officer, firefighter, the sergeant, the lieutenant of fire, the lieutenant of police, and the captain of fire, just so these people have an idea of what the proposal is to say from the starting to the max, because I think people will like that. And they're all here. I was hoping that could be happening tonight. If it can't, I understand.
Yes, sir.
Put my hands on it.
girls. All right. For you, Chief, the entry for firefighter EMT, the start would be approximately 40, don't try to write it down, would be approximately 41,116 up to about 73,839. Police officers, firefighters, paramedics, and FAOs, the entry would be about 47,122 up to about 84,625. The next one, I think this is my lieutenant. Or it's my sergeant, you're absolutely right. My sergeant would be, let me make sure. Police sergeant entry would be about 51,926 up to about 93,252. The police lieutenant would be started about 60,630 up to about 108,882. The police captain would be at about 76,574 up to about 137,516. Do you want me to shame the assistant police chief?
Not one.
Okay, then we won't even talk about it. And then we've got to do fire. Okay, so don't leave me. The fire lieutenant would be the same as the sergeant. Then that would be from 51,926 up to about 93,252. And fire captain, 60,630 up to about 108,82. Battalion chief would be 76,574 up to about 137,560.
We met 2 weeks ago, I had asked about reinstating supervisor support. How's that coming along?
Okay, Councilman Smith, I'm never gonna go home, but if you'll notice the ranges that we just identified, what we've attempted to do is to make sure that the ranges were far enough apart. So what we would be recommending is to make sure that if someone gets promoted to the next salary range or to a different salary range, that his or her salary would start at the minimum of the salary range unless that number is lower than what they are currently making. If it is, then they need to, at the very least, have a 5% increase in pay. So then they might go to the next salary range, but that step could be very different based on what they're currently making. That's what we typically recommend. We don't recommend an arbitrary, it has to be 7% or 8% or whatever, but that when the promotion occurs, you move to that salary range of that promotional opportunity, and then you're paid with it.
I assume that would be a policy decision, not a city.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Mr. President, not to put anybody on the spot, but when we meet tomorrow, these numbers and this data have been factored into the numbers we will discuss tomorrow.
Yes, we took the numbers that you saw here tonight and incorporated through our budget. And, one thing we've got to say, I appreciate Mr. Smith touching on that. The largest force we have is public safety, no doubt, and we'll be very competitive there. This looked at everyone across the board. We want to be competitive in public works. We want to be competitive in our administrative assistants, our library, all across the board. And we're confident that's exactly what this particular study is going to come back and see. Many positions throughout our city that may not even be in public safety are going to be lifted up. And so we want Hoover to be the place of choice for every job classification that's out there. But we will recommend this in our upcoming budget.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you, it's been my pleasure.
Rice, you were talking earlier about aggravations. I think this might qualify. A large number in this room are aware that some person or persons have become involved with an adjustment in the retirement contributions for the Hoover police officers and possibly certain 911 communications personnel. I'm in possession of a memo from the Human Resources Director to the members of the Hoover Police Department personnel regarding a change in Hoover's RSA benefits policy. This change was due to a misinterpretation, in my opinion, of an Alabama Supreme Court decision last year. This memo was distributed June 29th, yet the policy change it describes may likely have been initiated as far back as this past February. Human Resources only sent the memo after an officer checked his paycheck and found discrepancies. Had it not been for this officer, we may still not know that the requirement that the retirement benefits of our police officers had been quietly yet significantly reduced. It may be likely that the perpetrators of this policy change were trying to save money for the city, but at a terrible cost to our employees and recent retirees. We were saving quarters, yet collectively costing them tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lifetime. I see two issues with these actions. First, the city council makes policy decisions. This issue has never been brought to the council for consideration. Second, the case before the Supreme Court involves state law enforcement and does not apply to local law enforcement. In fact, I believe the decision explicitly states that it doesn't affect local law enforcement. However, this misinterpretation makes some sense, as I can find no evidence that city attorneys were consulted on this misguided policy decision. I'm not even sure that the mayor knew what was going on until late. This failure reflects a serious lack of judgment that exposes the city to litigation. I see this as an unconscionable action taken by a few people that was directly targeted towards our police officers and these certain 911 communicators. By taking this unauthorized and illegal action, these people have put into jeopardy the amount of retirement funding they would receive from the point of their retirement until their death. This is an important issue not only to our citizens, but by the number of officers in attendance this evening, it's very important to them. As identified by municipal code and state statutes, only the mayor in step with the council can set both pay scales and benefits. Retirement income is such a benefit. This change in policy has not been ratified by the council and thus must be immediately reversed, and whatever funding that are missing should be replaced. Mr. Mayor, I request that you bring a third-party investigator to determine who is involved in this appalling and cruel targeting of these public safety employees. They come to work every day praying they will, but not knowing if they will go home at the end of their shift or assignment. They don't need bureaucrats making their financial futures an additional stress in life. Mr. Mayor, I would ask that each and every person involved in this activity be seriously disciplined up to, including demotion and termination. Thank you. That being said, I'm ready to move on to item 6. Motion to reschedule.
Hang on.
Yes, sir.
Now, this is the first time I'm seeing this memo.
Yes, sir.
It's the first time I am seeing this part with my name on it and others, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I sure would like to hear from somebody from the city about this. Please, that's okay.
this is the first I've heard you say anything about this. We met with police officers a few weeks ago. We are studying this to see if what we did was the wrong direction or the right direction. And if it's not the right direction, we'll correct it. But I have never seen such grandstanding in my entire life as what you just did. And it's very unfortunate that you would do something like that.
Mr. Mayor, it's also very unfortunate that the council would be bypassed with one of the sole responsibilities, which is the making of policy.
All we did was adjusted the way we figured overtime. Now, if there's something that we found out a couple of weeks ago from one of our police officers, and we're addressing, as we would any other pay problem in our city. We do things like this. We address any kind of problem that comes up, and we don't have to have this type of grandstanding going on to address it. We've got it. We're working on it. We've talked about it, and we'll take care of it. It's very simple. There's no, it's unfortunate that you would do that. It really is. And I'm disappointed and I'm ashamed that our citizens have to see that type of conversation go on between our council president to accuse people of wrongdoing maliciously is something in my 43 years here I've never seen. So with that, you can have the last word. I've said the last I'm going to say on it. We'll take care of it in our normal course of business like we do everything else.
Anything from the council?
Mr. President, Mike, your name is on this, and can you kind of explain exactly why this occurred? I understand that it was a policy. Alan, we talked a little bit about it. I just want to understand why it occurred. I don't understand that because it's the first time I'm reading, and I know we talked about it. You explained a little bit of it to me, but there was a reason why.
Yeah, with your permission, I'd like to address it, if that's okay, Lewis. It was during a time period where we were all familiar with budgetary challenges, and so we were trying to look under every rock and make sure that we were doing everything we were supposed to be doing. Not looking for ways that we can compromise our employees, certainly not targeting anybody, certainly not trying to be malicious. Mr. Lewis was the sender of the email, but this was not a decision on Mr. Lewis's part, and he should not be singled out or viewed as having launched off on a flight of fancy or trying to do anything that's adverse to any employees. This was discussed vigorously. Mr. Smith, you and I have talked about it. I understand that we don't see it the same way. I get that. In our mind, this was a time reporting issue to try to be in compliance with RSA regulations. We did not fully understand the scope of what this might do to a pension until one of our police sergeants came forward, requested to meet. As the mayor indicated, we met with him and the chief and heard what he had to say. He had a very well-reasoned, well-researched position that he communicated to us. I think Mr. Corley, I think he sent some supporting documentation on to you after the meeting. And so that's where we are, as the mayor described it. We had an employee meeting. We got the information. We're looking at it. I actually exchanged emails with Mr. Corley today on this subject. The mayor's initial direction after I reported to him from the meeting with the police officer was, is this something we have to do? And I said, well, the time we thought we had to do it, comply with RSA time reporting based on the court case that you referenced, Mr. Smith. But in light of the meeting with the employee, there were some nuances to that court ruling that caused us to stop and rethink, does that ruling even apply to municipal police officers? So that's an open question that we put in front of the city attorney. And so essentially my email to him today was, please verify, yes, we have to do this, or no, this falls within the discretionary authority of the city, because the mayor has already directed that if this is the city's discretion, we need to reverse this. Now, I understand and I hear your point that this should have been a council decision. All I can offer you in that regard is we didn't see it that way. I think we've been very deliberate to try to defer. I know you weren't able to be on the conference call this morning. There were 3 items off of the proposed legal action list that I actually said to the city attorney, we need to remove those, and those are the purview of the council. They don't need to be on the mayor's work list. Those are issues for council members. We need to move them onto the council work list. That's their scope. So we've really tried to stay out of the council's backyard. I think we just disagree in our interpretation. Was this a benefits change, or was this us trying to move to a reporting structure for RSA that would put us in compliance? Once it was pointed out to us that, number one, hey, there's a pretty detrimental down the road effect, and to this officer's credit, he had actually done some calculations on what the pension impact would be. I don't remember if it was to him, excuse me, to him personally or to the average police officer. Nevertheless, it was substantial. That was an eye-opener. Secondly, his points about whether or not this court case upon which the decision was based is even relevant. And so we're simply awaiting clarification from the city attorney. The mayor's already said, if this is not a requirement, we need to put it back the way it was, which of course would imply full restoration of time, and we'll change our reporting with RSA, etc. Clearly, we have to be compliant with the rules of the retirement system. Somebody has to make the decision, if we think we're out of compliance, that we have to come into compliance. And that was the mindset and the understanding of multiple staff members, which is why I want to remove Mr. Lewis from the hot seat just because his name happened to be on the email. So I can answer any questions. I'm sorry?
But you're looking at it, you were looking at it, and you're gonna fix it.
Where we are, very simply, is if the city attorney says this is not required, the mayor's already said, put it back the way it was. And that's what will be done. If he says, no, this is required to be in compliance with RSA, then we have more ground to plow with that police officer, bring him back in, show him what we're looking at, and see if we can come to some kind of shared understanding. We're just waiting to find out, is this a have to? And if it's not a have to, the mayor was very clear and said, put it back the way it was.
Very good.
But even if it is a have to, Mr. Rice, is it not a policy change? Even if it's a forced policy change?
If it's I guess the way Mr. Smith, the lens that I think all this, I know me personally, and I think all the staff involved viewed it through a lens of it's just a time reporting issue. Now that might drive some changes in calculation at RSA. That's not us telling RSA, change our benefits package. That's us saying, we think we were reporting this time wrong and now we want to report it right. All that was based on the lawsuit. So if that's not, I'm sorry, on the court decision, that's not what the decision says, or if the decision does not apply to Hoover police officers, then we go back down that road and we go down a different fork and we put it back the way it used to be. I think you and I look at it differently in terms of what this action is, and I don't know who's right and who's wrong. I can tell you our actions were taken based on our understanding that this was just a time reporting issue. And then, as I've said before, the basis for that came in question, which every employee has a right to do. And I do want to say, and the chief was there and he can vouch for this, the attorneys were there, the individual that brought this forward was incredibly professional. He was not confrontational or argumentative. He simply came in and said, I'd like for you to look at this again. Here's my research. I don't think this tort ruling applies. And I think we ought to be a city where those conversations can happen. And I think we, as administrators, we ought to be people who can look at something and say, you know, we might have messed that up. And if we messed it up, let's fix it. And I think that's where we are.
At this point, we just have to agree to disagree.
And that's okay too. That's okay. I think as long as it gets corrected correctly for employees, at the end of the day, it probably doesn't matter if you and I agree. That's probably a side note. I think the main thing is, what does the city have to do? And if we have to do it, we have to do it. And if we don't have to do it, now we're into a discretionary area. The mayor's already made that decision. And that decision was go back to the way we used to report the time and communicate to this employee that he was correct and that we are taking these corrective actions. I think that's what we ought to be talking about.
more question, Mr. President. Who on this council knew about this prior to this evening? Knew about the memo and knew the fact that we were going to discuss this? Knew about the policy change before this evening?
I don't think there was any.
Mr. President, like you, this is the first time I'm seeing it. Mr. President and audience members, I apologize. As many of you may know, my wife had surgery last week and she is recovering, but I am needed at home at this time. So, for that reason, I'm going to
I think, Mayor, if I could, I can answer. I don't think any members of the council were involved in this discussion. And I think there are things, today I was brought a contract to sign. And I said, I don't sign contracts. And when I looked at it, it was for the park board. And I don't sign contracts that are for the city until they come through you guys and he delegates me to do it. So the point is, there are things that happen in this building every day.
Let me clear that. I'm not talking about the discussion to change. I'm talking about this document we were handed a few minutes ago.
Oh.
Who knew about there being a memo and this memo in particular prior to it being read aloud and discussed right now?
Say, I did not know about it until tonight.
I finished my portion of the memo this afternoon.
Okay. Anybody, any other council member involved? Because I think what I'm hearing, and what I'm hearing Mr. Green say, and what I'm hearing Casey say, they were kind of hit upside the head with this, okay, what's going on? Then I'm asking a bunch of questions of Mr. Rice and the Mayor, Mr. Lewis and everybody, and I don't know anything about this ahead of time. Now, if this was going on, it was something upsetting to our police department and to our police chief and to everyone here, as a council member, I'd like to know so I can go have those conversations with Chief Durzis and with our officers and find out, hey, what's going on? What's going on here? What happened? Instead, I'm seeing it now. And I talked to you a couple of weeks ago and said, what's going on? There's a lot of police officers at our meeting. I think I got my answer. But I sure would have liked to know about it ahead of time so I could have these conversations. And maybe we could have solved something without bringing it before this body tonight, right now, and discussing it. And I really think that's what I would like to have seen happen with this. I can't serve these people who I'm responsible to without knowing information like this and without being able to go have conversations with them about it. It's, I understand it was a misunderstanding the way the policy works, but before we get in arguments up here about this in front of people watching online and people within this room, I think we need to have conversations within our own body about this. Say, hey, something's not right. Let's go sit down and talk to the mayor. Let's go sit down and talk to Alan. Let's go talk to HR, whoever's involved, and try to work that out. And then if we can't do that, then certainly this is a forum for that. But as a council member, I would really like to know about something like this before we get into a meeting and start discussing it. This is my opinion.
And Mr. Posey, your point, at the last council meeting, we had a lot of uniformed police officers present, and a lot of you all were asking us, the mayor was asking me, why are all the police officers here? My assumption was because we had originally had, not publicized, but originally in a draft agenda, had the salary schedule presentation for the previous work session. And I thought, well, maybe that word got out, and maybe they think it's going to be about the salary schedule. I think now it's because they thought there was going to be an ambush that night, and instead the ambush was tonight. So unfortunately, you know, we didn't have the opportunity to address that other than the formal channels, which were with the officer who came forward, with the chief, who we met with and who we're dealing with.
Mr. President, if I may, take issue with the ambush terminology.
Okay.
And I mean,
And I don't mean by these
you're right.
individuals. I'm sorry, I don't mean, let me clarify that. I don't mean by these individuals.
Well, that's your prerogative, I mean, if that's how you see it. I mean, the employees affected by this were ambushed as well, by what is being described as basically an oops. And I know oops happen, you know, and in many businesses, an oops can affect lots of people. I guess what I'm concerned about is that you have a lot of folks affected, no council knowledge, no heads up anywhere along the way. And there's something that could be significantly affecting people. I can only speak for myself, but this seems to have caused, I mean, it looks like from what was done, it seems to have caused a lot of uncertainty amongst employees. I can only speak for myself. On behalf of myself and my role as an elected official, I apologize that there's that uncertainty. I've been in similar things. I would hope that the rest of our elected officials and leadership would also at least be concerned about how that has affected our employees. So, like I said, on behalf of myself, I apologize for that. I can't speak for anybody else. But I know there have been a lot of decisions over the last 2 years that have made, and we find out about it later on. I don't think that's intentionally bad faith or anything like that. This is a pretty egregious one, and I hope that we can get to a point where we know about these things as they're happening or beforehand. It would have been good to have a little bit of a heads up saying, hey, we run into an issue here, here's what we're seeing, this has affected retirement, whatever, so we would know. I do think it's a policy change. When you look at the wording of this memo, it's a policy change in my opinion. We'll defer to the attorneys on that, but I think the council should have been involved. And it's a mistake, it's an oops. I know that y'all are going to get to the bottom of it, but I think it's a pretty big one, and I hope that we don't get into something like this again.
The police and fire that showed up to that work session were here because they thought it was going to be the case study. That was the nobody, we had discussed with human resources, I know the sergeant we had a meeting with, and we sort of appreciated several months back. The sergeant came to me not long ago and said, what's going on? I talked to Mr. Lewis and said we've been working on it. I said, well, I think to try to address this thing, why don't we have a meeting with the city attorney, get the city attorney involved so we can get some resolution. And that's when Mr. Rice, myself, Mr. Corley, Sergeant of the Police Department sat down and talked about it again the last couple of weeks. What we're working on. So we addressed it the way we thought we should address it, and didn't want to. That's not have Mobile come straight to the city council and say this is the issue. We went through what I thought was the proper channel at the time to try to rectify the situation. So that's what we stand.
And Mr. President, to the Chief's point, that's what we thought we were doing. He was correct to ask for the meeting. I think we were all correct to sit down and try to understand this officer's position. And I know the officer's reflective of many different people's position, but he's the one who came forward, so that's who we met with. And that's what we thought we were doing. We thought we were working through that process to determine if it was a mistake and to fix it if it needed to be fixed. And that's all we're waiting on is that determination.
One thing I am going to say is I'm not going to ever stifle any conversation that any council member wants to make with us. Or them or myself. Just goes back to agreeing to disagree.
I don't know that anybody asked you to stifle any conversation, council. If I did, that wasn't the intent.
Mr. President, if I may.
It's not like you and I haven't had conversations.
We have, and what I shared with you was, you know what, that court ruling might not apply, and we're waiting on that word, and if we get that word, we're gonna put it back the way it was. That was the context of our conversation.
Just something quick. Do we know a time frame in which, well, don't answer that question. When you have a time frame, mine's reporting back. I know we've been going back and forth.
I bet it'll be widely known when this is still.
No, I'm just asking.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You will get an email from the mayor's
Thank
office. Yes, sir. In terms of the time frame, I'm not trying to put Mr. Corley on the spot. He indicated to me earlier today that he thinks he knows the answer, and I'm just waiting on that official in an email, no offense to him, so that it is properly documented, and then we'll take the appropriate action.
All right, I think we're ready to move on to our agenda. Item 6, we need a motion to reschedule the Monday, September 3rd, city council meeting to Tuesday, 4th, Labor Day.
Mr. President, I move for to reschedule the Monday, September 3rd meeting to Tuesday, September.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5849-18, Mr. Corley.
This resolution amends the budget for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2018, as set forth on the exhibit attached to the resolution.
Mr. President, I move for the approval of resolution number 5849-18.
Second.
Motion and a second. Dr. Lopez,
As I mentioned on Thursday night, this is an amendment that's just reflecting title changes, so some position title changes. Basically, 3 revenue officer position titles are changing to 1 revenue auditor and 2 revenue analysts, and there's no money involved.
Any questions for Dr. Lopez? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 8 is a change order, number 1, turn lane improvements on Chapel Lane at Jim Wilson Parkway at Galleria Boulevard.
Mr. President, I move for the approval of change order number 1.
Second.
Motion second, I believe it's just housekeeping in nature. Spoken about on Thursday. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5843-18, Mr. Corley.
Invitations to bid for street paving and resurfacing, bid number 18-009. Sent 44 vendors listed on the City of Hoover vendor list. Bids were open on Wednesday, July 25th, 2018. 3 bids were received. Dunn Construction Company was the lowest responsible bidder, meeting all specifications and requirements with its base bid, and alternate 1 bid in the amounts of $2,577,862.32 and $259,997.50 respectively. This bid is accepted, and the mayor is authorized to execute an agreement with the bidder for the work to be performed.
Mr. President, I move for the approval of resolution number 5843-18.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Conversation from the council. Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next, we have a public hearing for the abatement of public nuisance due to weeds and/or grass. We have resolution 58. Mr. Mack, do you want to come up so we can go ahead and conduct the public hearing?
Yes, sir. Tonight we have 2 cases for the abatement. This is where the second hearing, y'all are going to vote whether to the city will take care of the properties. This is going to affect 2 properties tonight: 3575 Warner Ridge Drive and 2244 Pine Lane. And the one on Warner Ridge is a commercial property. It's been vacant for a while, and that's pretty straightforward. One on Pine Lane, the owner has made an attempt to cut it, but there's still back, it's overgrown. And, I would recommend abatement on that.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Would you like to come down and speak?
Meg Callahan.
Callahan, you live in this address?
I do.
Thank you.
I have been working very hard to do what needs to be done. Right now, I have gotten to a point, there is a tree there, but we're trying to finish that up by this weekend. Get the tree out of the way, get the rest of the weeds. A lot of them are gone. But we intend very fully to finish it up, and we had everything taken down with the machine, but it grew back, so we're gonna try to get another machine finished.
Mr. Mack, does it change anything in your opinion?
Yes, sir. Ms. Callahan's made a great attempt at it, and I believe, her intentions are to finish it, and the city would prefer, the homeowner to finish. So, I would still recommend voting for abatement, but with them giving her the time to finish it. And, as long as it's finished, then it'll be finished.
This is, Pine Lane.
This is on Pine Lane, yes, 2244 Pine Lane.
Any questions from the council?
Hey, yes, Mr. President. Mr. Mack, would you say again, you were in favor of allowing her the time, and you're also in favor of abatement?
Well, I would want the council to vote for abatement where we would have that, and then giving her, I would not have Public Works cut it and give her a semester time to finish it. And perhaps you can get a feel with the weeds reasonable. That way we could go ahead and have, we would have the tools. I would be able to have it cut
5848-18. Properties located at the following addresses have an overabundance of grass or weeds present thereon and present a threat to the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the city of Hoover. 2244 Pine Lane, Hoover, Alabama. 3575 Lorna Ridge Drive, Hoover, Alabama. This resolution declares the overabundance of grass and weeds present on the above properties as public nuisances and orders the abatement thereof as provided under Alabama law.
Mr. President, I move for the approval of resolution number 5848-18 with the subject that there will be a 2-week time period in which you can work on the property, that Mr. Mayor will use his discretion as to whether that is met.
Yes, sir, that's exactly that.
Second. Second. Any conversation from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5850-18, Mr. Ford.
This resolution declares the following properties as public nuisances due to weeds and or grass. 2384 Chapel Road, Hoover, Alabama. 1770 Theo Ballard Drive, Hoover, Alabama. And orders the abatement thereof as provided under Alabama law.
Yes, sir, council, please.
Now we need a motion for it.
Mr. President, I move for the approval of resolution number 5850-18.
Second. Motion second.
I was gonna let you know those properties have been satisfied. It just actually works on its way. So there's actually no motion withdrawn. There's no apologies.
Mr. President, I'd like to amend my motion as a motion to withdraw resolution 5850-18.
Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5851-18, Mr. Corley. Oh, wait, we have, we need a motion to continue. The city needs a little extra time.
Mr. President, I move to continue resolution number 5851-18.
Second. A motion, second. Any questions from the council? From the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We also seem to have a continuance on resolution 5852-18.
Mr. President, I move to continue resolution number 5852-18.
Second. Motion, second. Any questions from the council? From the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5853-18, Mr. Ford.
This resolution authorizes Mayor Frank Mercado to execute a confirmation of investment and default fund changes agreement with Alaris Financial, N.A. regarding the Alaris Deferred Compensation Plan.
Mr. President, I move for the approval of resolution number 5853-18.
Second. Have a motion and a second.
Yes, sir, this is just a periodic update. Funds available for our Alaris optional deferred compensation plan. These are changes in funds identified by the plan manager. These have been presented to and agreed upon by the EAC.
Changes to the employees, their options.
Yeah, well, they will have some different options to choose from if they choose to participate in the plan.
All right, any questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5854-18.
This resolution authorizes Mayor Frank Mercado and/or his designee to execute a court referral officer contract and as well any other necessary documents to effectuate such agreement and/or its provisions with the Administrative Director of Courts, Judicial Branch, State of Alabama.
Mr. President, I move for approval of resolution number 5854-18.
Second. Motion, second. Any comments or questions from the council? Any from the audience? We heard extensively on Thursday, basically continuing as we have in the past, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. All right. Any comments from the audience or the council? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5855-18.
This resolution declares the items listed on the resolution as surplus to be either sold as is at public auction or disposed of by recycling as noted on the resolution.
Mr. President, I move for the approval of resolution number 585518.
Second.
Motion second, Mr. Ben, you want to tell them where they can go to look for it?
Yes, sir. Right now, we are working with our auction partner, Hoover's Auctions. They will be picking up these items, assuming that this measure passes this evening. And they will be combining those items with some other items that were previously declared surplus. And we will be posting on our city webpage the link to their online auction site, auctionsbypeers.com. But we'll get that information on our website, posted as soon as they have gathered all that information.
Your possible date.
Do not have one just yet. I do know that they have been particularly busy this time of year, and they have just now been able to get to the items that we previously declared auction. So hopefully within the coming 2 or 3 weeks, you'll see some progress there.
Perhaps we can put it on the city website once we have a date, so people will have some notification of what's time.
Yes, sir. We'll have the date and the link to their website.
And this out on a $30 big screen TV. You're not giving your TV. Thank you, sir. Any comments from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 585618, Mr. Corley.
This resolution authorizes the Birmingham Water Works Board to install fire hydrants at the locations in Black Ridge Phase 2 and Lake Wilton Phase 4 noted on the resolution. It also authorizes Vulcan Water Company to install fire hydrants at the locations in Lake Wilton Phase 3 and Fleming Farms Phase 1 as noted in the resolution.
Mr. President, I move for the approval of resolution number 585618.
Second.
There's a motion, second. Any comments or questions from the council? Chief, this on installations. 25 fire hydrants to be installed. Very good. Thank you, sir. 25 hydrants and all. Anything from the audience? Seeing, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next, we have resolution 585718, Mr. Ford.
This resolution authorizes Mayor Brocato to execute a lease for certain real property located behind the old Bluff Park Elementary School building, which contains a historical cabin and outbuildings for use as a public cultural facility for demonstration and historical education about life in the 1800s in Alabama. This resolution further authorizes Mayor Brocato to execute a use agreement with Hoover Historical Society to conduct these public cultural purposes.
Mr. President, I move for the approval of resolution number 585718.
Second.
A motion, second. So we have 2 leases that we're going to be voting, Mr. Corley. One between the city and the schools, and the second from the city and the Historical Society.
The second is a use agreement.
Yes. But
The lease and use agreement, correct.
2 different agreements.
Part of this, both part of the same resolution.
All right, very good. Any questions from the council?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kelly, I guess I would direct you to, there's the $600 utility fee. Can you explain how that came about and just kind of explain what it covers?
Thank you, Mr. Posey. When we started conversations on this, we know that there's some electricity being used by the Historical Society in its present state right now. We do know that there's electricity used when they have their events with school children and other events for the city. I asked our maintenance head to go out and please try to estimate minimal costs just to be accountable to the school district and the tax funds. This is a guess, and it says in the lease that we certainly will adjust it. If it's too much funds, then we'll adjust it back. We're certainly not using the profit center, and I know that's not what you suggested.
Thank you, I just was curious.
Sure, I don't blame you. We asked them.
Mr. President, thank you so much for the collaboration of the schools, Dr. Murphy, and also Mayor for monthly meetings. Look forward to more opportunities we have in the city and the school collaboration.
Mr. President, I speak.
Yes, sir.
This is collaboration with the city. This is absolutely a jewel for the city of Hoover, Bluff Park. I invite citizens that haven't been out there to see this cabin and what it's teaching children about what things used to be in the old days. The Historical Society is very much valued by all of us in the city. So thank you so much for the cooperation, Mayor, and you also. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 19 is set public hearings for Monday, September 17th. Consider the following requests coming forward with positive recommendation from the August 13th P&Z meeting. First, we have Richard Johnson with SB Dev Corp. Is requesting conditional use approval for a community amenity to include a clubhouse, screen porch, garden shed, pavilion, parking, lawn, and sidewalks to be built in the Abington subdivision. BH Investments LLC is the property owner. Property is zoned PUD PR1, planned single family. These are public hearings, Mr. Johnson, so unless you go to the same. Item B, Mr. Randall H. Goggins is requesting recently annexed property at 7160 Cahaba Valley Road, be zoned from Shelby County Agricultural A1 to Hoover C2 Community Business District. This is a first reading, Mr. Ford.
This ordinance amends Hoover zoning ordinance by rezoning 7160 Cahaba Valley Road from Shelby County A1 to Hoover C2.
Posey. Payment of the bill.
Yes, sir, I reviewed the bills and I recommend that they be paid in full.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Any comments or questions from the council?
One quick comment, Mr. President. I want to say this to the end. One word that Gail Mayweather, that did this salary compensation study, continued to say about Hoover was Hoover brings some uniqueness that other cities don't have. Not almost have, but they don't have. I had a pleasure of going to the library on Friday to bingo, and it closes at 6. I mean, roughly 200 to 300 people were packed outside waiting to get in, and I had the time of my life there. The things that Park and Rec do, all these activities and things staff create makes Hoover so unique, and that's why that's the most traveled library in the state. About 500,000 folks. So, look, I really could thank staff for thinking outside the box, working extra hours, trying to see how can I make this better for a quality of life for our citizens. And that means a lot. I know we took a lot of time today, but, you know, people are moving into this place for a lot of different reasons. And I appreciate all that you do for the citizens and also do for our city. So thank you.
Posey.
Just want to remind everybody, tomorrow at 9 a.m. we will have our first budget hearing, and then we will have a second round of budget hearings Thursday, August 23rd at 9 a.m. And for those with cameras in the back, if you thought tonight was fun, come back tomorrow.
I have one thing to say. First of all, thank you, Mr. Singer, for this very well crafted and kind letter. Actually, I almost said email, but this is actual physical commentary here, so thank you very much. In talking with where the Historical Society is now, I think we talked about the lease there is not a long-term solution for a couple reasons. We have some plans for the court possibly to move into that area. The second thing is it's kind of reminds me of Indiana Jones at the end, where you have all these antiquities and things in a government warehouse, and maybe people can or can't see them. I'm thinking long-term, it'd be awesome if we, through this budgeting process, we can look for a place, a long-term place, on City Property. Mr. Smith, you mentioned maybe there's a house out there in Veterans Park, something that has character that can really be a long-term home for the Historical Society that is a little more open to the public. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with our safety center, it's a great building, but I would hope that there's some place we could find that really had that historical character that we could get y'all a permanent home to really match the character. But thank you for this letter, it was very nice.
Anything else from the council? Anything from the audience? Mr. Singer?
Let's see, which hat should I wear? Okay, President of the Hoover Historical Society, Arnold Singer. That letter was printed Tuesday of last week before anything happened with the lease. We're very happy with the lease. You may have seen programs on TV where people go in their attic and they find treasures that are beyond belief. Well, we had that happen yesterday. I was at home. I got a call from our first vice president. We had a glass case that was being picked up by someone from the Oak Bluff Park School. And it was sitting on a table for at least 20 years. So the idea of a treasure that's in front of you that you don't know exists, the treasure that it turned out to be is in the middle of the table was a plaque saying that this table was where on May 19th, 1967, the incorporation papers for the city of Hoover were executed. I communicated that to the mayor and Alan Rice. Got a quick response. Today, that table was moved. It's now over at the Public Safety Center. It is something that I think should be a centerpiece for the city whenever we have important documents to sign, public documents to sign. That would be a perfect thing. So temporarily, we've got it at the Public Safety Center, but yes, it should be somewhere else. It should also be part of the 200th anniversary of Alabama, which is celebrated next year. We're faced with an interesting situation. This lease for the folklore center is a one-year lease, renewable annually for up to 75 years. This presents a very interesting challenge to us, and that is recruiting craftspeople and docents to be able to fulfill this requirement that is put on the Historical Society. So I would appreciate anyone who has any interest in history that wants to volunteer to help us show our children what life was like at the 1800s, especially in the 1840s in Alabama. Please feel free. Also, Wednesday of last week, we went live with our new website, and that's still a work in progress, but we'll see an amazing thing there. Changing a bit. Now, Arnold Singer, 613 Riverhaven Place. Tomorrow morning, the City Council begins the budget process for the new fiscal year. Please consider life as well as quality of life in making your decisions. Remember, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. 2 weeks ago, the mayor and council honored 2 Hoover employees for rescuing 2 swimmers at the Hoover Rec Center, at the Hoover Rec Center pool. They work for a recreation department which has approximately 40 vacant positions, some of which may be lifeguards. Again, strong as the weakest link. Every department contributes to the quality of life in Hoover. Volunteer organizations such as the Hoover Beautification Board, established in 1977, the Friends of the Hoover Library, established in 1982, and the Hoover Historical Society, established in 1989, may soon be joined by a new group. Currently under construction is the Hoover Playground and Splash Bar at the Hoover Med Complex. As described by Dean Nance at last week's Chamber of Commerce luncheon, it will be an all-inclusive facility, one that is adapted to many levels of ability. I believe that a group of volunteers be organized to assist the public while at the facility. We need to evaluate the feasibility of such a group and its benefits to the city. We need to evaluate the training that they might need.
Thank you, sir. Anything else from the audience? Yes, sir. Come down and get your name and address.
I'm the head coach of Wake Aquatics, and I just came here today to thank you guys for your support this past year through work with First Street Swimming Tennis, and also just to promote competitive swimming in the Birmingham area. I started Wake Aquatics about a year ago. The idea was to provide a path to competitive swimming for kids, and I think maybe with the ultimate goal, maybe not Olympics, but although a lot of kids I have, dream about that, but maybe the end goal would be a success story, would be getting these kids successfully placed in college, continuing their swimming in university. We were pretty successful this year. All three graduating seniors will be competing at the college level. I have one attending Arizona State. He'll be on some form of athletic and academic aid. I have another one will be attending Birmingham Southern, and the third will be attending Queens in North Carolina. I hope to continue that, and I hope you'll continue to support us. That's all I can.
Thank you, sir. Hope to see you again next year. Anything else from the audience? Anything else from the council? Mayor? All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor, can leave.